Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Heroes League Learning Series on Cybersecurity. My name is Patricia Ogis, and I am the Youth Program Coordinator for the Heroes Foundation. Today, our goal is to get you more informed on cybersecurity and what you can do to safeguard yourself while you're online. You'll be hearing from two experts, Ms. Keisha Lashley and Mr. Richard Shepard. Our host this evening is Ms. Maya Caraway and Mr. Jeremy Burton, participants of the Heroes Development Program. Now I hand you over to our lovely hosts, Maya and Jeremiah, who will introduce our facilitators for today.
Good afternoon. My name is Maya Garaway and I'm a Form 4 student at Bishop Anstey High School East. I'm a self-taught dancer and contortionist. In my free time, I enjoy performing on onstage vapor performances, learning new things, and being surrounded by positive energy. I will now hand you over to Jeremiah.
And I'm Jeremiah Burton, a 15-year-old who attends Southeast Port of Spain. My dream is to become an environmental engineer, and I love watching anime and making people laugh. I'm looking forward to learn how to protect myself from hackers so I can be safe online. Back to you, Maya.
Jeremiah, you mentioned that you enjoy watching anime. Can you tell me what's your favorite anime and why?
My favorite anime will have to be Naruto Shippuden, because that was my second anime I ever started. That was the anime that got me into loving anime and so forth. Since you asked me a question, may I ask you a question?
That's not a problem.
What's a contortionist? I never heard that word before.
Oh. Well, a contortionist is basically a person who's really flexible and can bend their body in different ways, different shapes. So a lot of people consider us as being double jointed. And actually my favorite position, or contortion position I should say, is when you're in a handstand and you bring your legs all the way over your head. It looks really cool and it's really fun. But Jeremiah, let's not make this entire show about us. Let's introduce the people for today.
Sure, I agree with that.
Yes. Keisha Lashley is a project administrator at the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. She leads a team of security analysts, and her unit is responsible for executing the bank's cybersecurity program. She's instrumental in ensuring that the organization remains resilient to the changing threat landscape and that a strong cyber posture is maintained through the implementation of appropriate controls. Keisha has helped to shape the strategic direction of the IT department and has led numerous discussions at the board and senior management level on cyber risks. She also held the position of the chairperson of the Regional Cybersecurity Information Sharing Group to promote the threat intelligence sharing all over the central banks within the Caribbean. During her career, Keisha has served in various roles within IT, including application development and system administration. She received her bachelor's degree in information systems from Morgan State University and a master's degree in information systems from George Washington University. She holds various certifications, including the Certificate Information Security Manager, System Security, and Project Management. Keisha is passionate about helping young people define their vision and to set goals to achieve it. She believes that too often we limit ourselves, not because of our ability, but because we think too much and give up too soon. Every blessing meant for us we shall receive, and we must always remember everything in due course. Back to you, Jeremiah.
Mr. Richard, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Richard is leading a digital revolution as the head of technology at Proman by maximizing on business intelligence strategies and leveraging proven technology to optimize performance. As a technologist with over 20 years of experience, he enhances the enterprise ability to identify and manage risk and safely make informed decisions through data integration, process optimization, and implementation of interactive technology solutions that focus on delivering greater business value and an enhanced user experience. In his previous role as Chief Information Officer for DeNova Energy, this successful unmanned offshore operations and centrally connected communications and control system established for the business are results of Richard's innovative design and development strategies. Richard had a constant track record of positive digital disruption in the financial services sector as well as the energy industry. He strengthened cybersecurity and enterprise systems efficiencies as Assistant Vice President at Group IT Shared Services at Guardian Group, and consistently increased revenue generation annually through the strategic collaboration, new revenue stream creation, and prudent cost management as Vice President at Electronic Services at Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation. He also held management positions at First Citizens Bank and Citibank. Building on his foundation in electrical and electronic engineering from John Donaldson Technical Institute, Richard gained a honors in computing and information systems at London Metropolitan University and an MBA Business Administration and Management from Alangina Ruskin University. He served as a substantive member on the technical subcommittee of the National Technical Advisory Council and is currently a member of the ACAM Digital Transformation Committee. Back to you, Maya.
Jeremiah, I still feel as though we are only hearing about you and me reading. So, Miss Lashley, would you care to introduce yourself to the viewers, please?
Thank you so much, Maya. Thank you, Jeremiah. And a warm and pleasant greetings to everybody on the panel, everybody who's a part of this discussion. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I want to thank the Heroes Foundation team for putting this together. I believe between Richard and I, we will try to impart as much knowledge as possible. It's very encouraging to see young people interested. And, I think the future is in good hands. You and Jeremiah, you are representing well. So kudos to you, and I look forward to what this afternoon brings.
Lovely contribution, Miss Lashley. Mr. Richard, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Maya, and good afternoon to Maya and Jeremiah and to Keisha as well, and the other persons on the panel. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon to share with you a bit of what I would have experienced, and hoping that if in any small way I can contribute to your learning and to your awareness of cybersecurity in particular, or just even in technology as a whole, because cybersecurity is a subcomponent of technology. And I think, obviously, this I'm pleased to be a part of the Heroes Foundation's initiative here to bring learning to this sector of the population, to the young people. I think it's really underserved currently, and kudos to you guys for putting this on.
Thank you, Mr. Richard, and welcome to both of you. So to start today's session, I would like to ask a question. What is cybersecurity based on your knowledge? Ms. Lashley, can you go first? I mean, they always say ladies first.
Thank you so much, Maya. Cybersecurity is basically the defense of systems, your computers, your network, your data from malicious attackers. Essentially, what we as cybersecurity professionals, what we are responsible for is really safeguarding our organization's critical data. Each, regardless of what industry you're in, each company has what it must consider its crown jewels, the things that keeps the company and keeps the lights on. So our job is really to ensure that our data, our systems are not accessed by anybody who ought not to have access to. So you want to ensure the safety of your data. You want to ensure that nobody is able to compromise your equipment, your software, that type of thing from an organizational level. and you're basically defending the organization against attackers. That's pretty much what the field is. Now, it seems pretty easy, but there's a lot that goes into defending an organization. It's a constant job. I'm sure Richard can share with you his own experiences where, it's never something that you can say, all right, I'm good, I'm finished, we are fully secure. That's not the type of field it is, right? So it's essentially defending and protecting your assets, your systems from a malicious attacker. That's what it is.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Sounds like you need to put in a really big input in order to get a good output. Mr. Richard, can I please hear from you, please? What is cybersecurity based on your knowledge?
Actually, I can't add very much to what Keisha's added this afternoon, sorry. This was quite a comprehensive explanation. I would add, I think, in addition to protecting your assets, whether those are physical assets, meaning computers or networks and so on, or whether it's applications or programs and your data, I think also an important part of cybersecurity is also your ability to identify whether you have been attacked and understand how you can recover from those attacks. Because it's as Keisha would also attest to, in this field, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so that as much barriers as you put in place to ensuring that you can't get attacked, the possibility still exists that you will be. And it's as important to ensure that you can know when you've been attacked and how do you recover from those attacks.
Thank you for that. Jeremiah, I now hand you over to our lovely people today.
Well, thank you, Maya. Well, Mr. Jordan, I have a personal question for you because when I was reading through your bio just now, I saw you went through many schools and things. So I was just asking for some tips because Form 4 itself just a little too tricky. So I see you went through plenty of schools. So I was asking for some tips, for the young ones too.
Okay, I think school is a difficult time, right? It wasn't my favorite time, I could say. High school, I have great memories and fond memories of high school, but it's tough. And in particular, it can be tricky to figure out what you want to do. Choosing subjects, getting in, and then preparing for CXE. You're putting your mind towards where you think you fit into this world, how you think you're going to contribute as a professional, or or if you're a creative person, how do you contribute in a creative way to the world and to your country? I think if I had to give you one tip, I would say you never know it all. So continue to experience as much as you can. Draw on the experiences of others. Keep questioning and asking questions from people in positions or in jobs that you think are interesting to learn more about them. And don't box yourself in. Even if you think today you want to be an engineer or you want to be a doctor or you want to be a draftsman, whatever your aspirations are, know that life is not so simple and it will take you in many unexpected directions. And you should really just embrace that journey. And be open to learning as much as you can from whoever you can.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shepard. Mr. Shepard, we would also like to know, as young persons who are basically forced to be on some form of device during these times, whether it's for school or entertainment, what are some cybersecurity threats we should be aware of?
Okay, so we're digging straight into threats. Okay, so I would say I'd touch on a few, but I think the number one threat I think you should be concerned with is social engineering. And social engineering, it sounds like a complex word, but all it means is someone is using your information or your personal information against you or to get access to your information. So how is social engineering used primarily? I would say, look at your social media. So Are you on social media right now, Jeremiah?
Yes, Mr. Shepherd, on
What?
Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp.
Good. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So on your Instagram, for example, do you use two-factor authentication, or do you know what that is?
I think I know what that is. That is when you enter your Gmail, then after them ask you to enter your Gmail again, or them send a verification code to your email.
Good. So that's a really good example of what we call two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And when you're trying to protect yourself against threats like social engineering, using things like two-factor authentication is one method you can use to keep yourself potentially safe from an attack. And why? So very often, someone may get access to a password that you have, maybe because you wrote it down and you left it on your desk, or you left it, or someone has guessed it because you've made it too easy. You've put it as password, or you've put it as the name of your dog or your girlfriend, for example. So someone can easily guess your password and gain access to your account. But now systems are getting more sophisticated and understanding if someone's entering a password for your account and it doesn't seem to be the computer that you normally use, it may try to ask a question, maybe to verify if it's really you. And one of the ways they do that is by sending a code to a phone or to another device. What this does is that it uses something that you have, not just something that you know. So multi-factor authentication uses something that you know, which is a password, as well as something that you have, which is a phone, a device that has maybe a fingerprint scanner or Face ID or one of those things that can help to identify and verify that it's really you accessing the account. So while I can go through a number of types of cybersecurity threats, and I don't want to, hog the entire topic, I think social engineering is the main one that I'd single out to protect yourself against. And one of the ways you do that, one, I'll recap, use complex passwords, something that it's not easy to guess. When you're using a complex password, you don't have to remember it. And don't use the same password for all your sites. So your Facebook password and your Instagram password, even though it's the same company, technically, that may not be a good example. But let's say your email password and your Facebook password should be different. And they should be complex, meaning they should be more than 8 or 10 characters, and they should have a number of different, maybe special characters and numbers and capital letters in them. Now, it can be easy to forget when you make a complex password. And so I'd encourage that you use things like password managers. If you're using your phone, use something like Keychain on iPhone or Samsung Pass or Samsung. Or if you don't have iPhone or Samsung, you can use LastPass or 1Password. Those are applications that keep your password safe so that you can use really hard passwords that no one can guess, but you don't have to remember them. So those are really good tips. So don't use the same password, use complex passwords, and use multi-factor authentication as much as you can on the sites that do offer it or the applications that offer it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I guess I have to go and change my passwords now. But before we hand this back over to Maya, is there anything else we should know about cybersecurity?
I like your questions. They're so broad, Jeremiah. I don't know where to start answering that question. There's so much to know about it. I don't want to take up so much of the time, but let me maybe touch on one more area, which is ransomware, which is another threat that you should be concerned about. So ransomware actually, let me step back. Everyone knows that, if you take an example of what you see in the movies, right? There's always a scene, or not always, but there's often a scene with someone typing furiously on a keyboard, trying to get into a system, right? And maybe there's a clock counting down, and he's pretending that, the security systems in the company he's trying to break into is so difficult, and, it's a real dramatic scene. And maybe there's someone on the company side that is also typing very furiously, trying to stop the bad actor from trying to gain access to the system. basically, that's for me cybersecurity in a nutshell: protecting the bad actors, protecting yourself against the bad actors, and yourself being that good actor. And there are a number of ways that these bad actors will try to gain access to systems and to get information. And it's a serious problem globally. I think, for example, it's estimated to cost something like $6 trillion in 2021 from losses from people that have broken into systems. So that's $500 billion a month almost that's being lost from people attacking systems. So it's a really serious problem. And I think if you are continuing to raise your awareness of what those threats are, that is the biggest barrier to ensuring that you can be secure. Awareness is one of the number one things. I'd give you another statistic. I think about of that $6 trillion that I spoke about, I think about 95% of that is because of someone making a mistake. It's not because of a flaw in the system. It's not because of firewalls and all these fancy technical terms that we may use. It's because someone clicked on a link. It's because someone didn't change a password, or it's because someone wasn't aware of the threats that exist. So things like phishing, if you've heard of that term, where people may send emails pretending to be someone else and trying to trick you into clicking on a link that you then either gives you a virus or tries to grab a password from you. That's probably one of the main ways that's a social engineering attack as well, by the way. That's probably one of the main ways that you should be aware of a threat to your security, your personal security.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. That was very informative. Ms. Lashley, would you care to tell us what are your takes on cybersecurity? What more we should know about cybersecurity?
Sure, thank you, Jeremiah. Richard and I are very much aligned in what we see as some of the major threats facing yourselves. What I would want to add on social engineering is that attackers take advantage of understanding human nature, right? So as people, we like to get things free. So what they will do is they will send a text message, hey, click here to win a free iPad. I don't know how many of you have received text messages telling you to click here, KFC is giving away this, that, and the other. And just a life lesson, something seems too good to be true, it usually is. That's whether it's cybersecurity or any other aspect of life. So social engineering, the attackers understand human nature and they take advantage of that. Another thing is we as people, we curious. So somebody tells you, hey, take a look at this latest video. You don't even know the person, never saw them before, but you want to see what it is they sent you. So again, that curiosity that, hey, let me see what happens. Or very often people might say, well, I click on the link and nothing happened. Well, nothing may have happened that you can see actively, but you don't know what type of malicious processes may have been launched when you clicked on that particular attachment or that particular link. So as Richard said, there are different things that you need to do as a young person, as anybody, is you need to make it as difficult as possible for somebody to compromise your identity or to compromise your account. Use passphrases and some of the other controls that Richard would have already mentioned, all right? With respect to ransomware and that type of attack, what happens, and I've seen examples of it happening right here in Trinidad, where somebody's machine is locked, right? So you may say, well, Keisha, I don't really have too much confidential stuff on my machine, but you may have pictures, you may have documents, you may have different things on your device. And if you want to get that data back, somebody has compromised your machine and they've locked your data. They might say to you, well, Jeremiah, here's what. You have to pay me $200 to get your data back. Now, one, you don't know if you're really going to get that data back. 2, they may give it to you and still keep a copy for themselves. 3, they might tell you, okay, well, you've paid 200, well, give me 300 more. So that's the risk you run when you engage these type of attackers. So what do? You have to back up your systems, back up your data. You may say, well, what does I really have? You might have pictures, you might have documents. The point is that should anything happen to your machine, you have a clean copy of your data that you can always restore. That's what we do in our companies. Our intent is really not to pay. We're going to go to our backups. And I'm encouraging you guys today, those who are listening today, if you don't have a backup, now is the time to make a note, hey, let me get a backup of my data. And some of the basic things that we need to do as anybody is that we need to do the basics well. What we have to understand is that these cyber criminals, they are not going away. This is a very, very financially rewarding field for them. And until it becomes a field that they're not really getting too much returns, they're going to continue doing it. So we have to make it as difficult as possible for them to compromise us. And that's what I would encourage you guys to do. Make it as difficult as possible. Well, you might say, well, Keisha, how do I do that? Update the devices. I know sometimes they might say, oh gosh, another update coming out. Yes, take the time and update it. Most times it's fixing some vulnerability that could be exploited. Update your operating system, update your browsers, use antivirus, use complex passwords. Those are basic things. And I think if we do the basic things well, we'll be setting up ourselves for some level of success. It's nothing guaranteed, but all we're trying to do is make it as difficult as possible. So that's what I would add at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Lashley. Well, that was both Mr. Richard, Mr. Shepherd, and Mr. Lashley. Your points were very informative. Thank you for that. Now I will hand you back over to Ms. Maya.
Yes, so I was aware that you guys shared a lot on how the cyber crimes occur, but we normally have weekly sessions, and in our weekly hero session, the question of how these cyber crimes are dealt with, or the laws in which are enforced to deal with the cyber crimes arose. So I would like if Ms. Lashley can share with us your knowledge about cyber crimes and how they are dealt with, or the laws enforced to deal with these circumstances.
Sure, no problem, Maya. So in terms of legislation that we have in the country, I would say we are not at a state where we can say we are a mature country where we have very legislation that is well entrenched and it's available. Because what we have found and what we've seen is the TTPS, the police service. Yes, they have a cybercrime unit, but the legislation that they have to operate within may not be as strong as they would like it to be. So there are 2 pieces of legislation that are available at this time. The Computer Misuse Act and the Computer Offense, let me just get the name of it, Offense Against the Person Act. Those are the 2 pieces of legislation that are available. There's a cybersecurity bill that I believe is in Parliament at this time that is waiting to be passed. So as a person, what are your options? Somebody is bullying you, somebody is harassing you. What does the TTPS have available in order to take action? Well, those 2 pieces of legislation that I would have mentioned before allows the TTPS to investigate harassment, violations that somebody may have made using some type of digital environment. And that is what is available right now, should somebody have a particular issue that they're dealing with. If you're looking at from a country perspective and at the national level, what is available, there's a body that operates out of the Ministry of National Security. That particular body is called the CSIT. It is the Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. They look at attacks that happen at a national level. So they also work with the police service, but they look at attacks that happen within maybe a ministry or that's happening with a number of organizations in the country. So those are the different options that are available. If it's something with you and I, we go to the TTPS. If it's something with our organizations, we may look at the CSITs. All right?
Yes, Miss. Thank you a lot for that. Mr. Shepherd, can you give guidelines as to how a person can go about contacting the TTPS based on their issue with a cybercrime that occurred to them?
I'm actually not as familiar with that as I should be. I believe there is an email that I was made aware of, but I'll look it up and give it to you in 1 minute. Or I don't know if Keisha may know it offhand.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know the email offhand, but I know that they have an app and you could go to their website and make some reports, but I don't know the email.
Yeah, you caught me, Maya.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. We are all learning today. Continuous learning is the best way to learn. Yes. So I would now hand you back over to Jeremiah to do the other questions.
Right, thank you, Maya. So most of our participants in the Heroes Development Program range from forms 3 to 5. This is the stage where they are narrowing in on career choices, and we do have persons who are interested in technology. Can you share with us what are some career opportunities in the cybersecurity field, Mr. Shepherd?
Okay. So first off, I think before I get into the opportunities, maybe I'd speak a bit about what that path looks like. So before you get to the job, you probably want to prepare yourself for potential opportunities. And I think where you currently are, if you're talking third form and fourth form, I think obviously right now a healthy interest in both infrastructure as well as application, meaning that technology is, let's say it's broken up into two kind of main buckets, let's say. One is the hardware, and that's your computers and your servers and your switches and routers and firewalls and those types of things. And then you have your applications. And those are obviously the programs that sit on all that hardware and that you consume. Security can pertain to both software as well as hardware. So if you're looking into being, if you're looking into pursuing a career in cybersecurity, you can either specialize in one or the other area. And because these areas are so broad and so deep in how vast they are, I would say that you probably want to get a feel for which one of those you may have a more of a propensity towards, or maybe more of a which one that you prefer better. So getting accustomed or getting acquainted with the various types of hardware that's used in security, and also some of the techniques that are used in protecting software, are things that will probably open your eyes to what's involved when you get into the marketplace and you're looking for a job. You're not going to be surprised when someone asks you, well, what do you think about firewall configurations, right? Or what do you think about penetration testing on an application? So let me explain those two things. Now, when I spoke about hardware and software, some of the roles that typically exist in organizations may be infrastructure security. And one of those roles may involve reviewing and understanding the best practices for keeping the hardware operating within all of the safe parameters according to best practices. So that means, as Keisha would have alluded to, things like keeping them updated, keeping all the firmware updated to the latest patch levels, looking at the different threats that are currently out there. Some of those are specific to different types of hardware that you have, to a brand of hardware almost, some of those. So you have to keep on top of not just threats that are general, but the threats that are specific to the hardware that you have. Or even on the software side, there may be threats that are specific to the software that you use. So there may be a threat to a Windows device, or there may be a threat to an Android device if you're using a cell phone, that have different types of mitigations, meaning there are different things that you may need to do to protect your software, and based on the type of software that it is. So I don't know if you're getting an idea as to just how many different paths there are in security when you're learning about, or when you're looking into cybersecurity. It's not just one person. There are quite a number of roles that make up a cybersecurity apparatus for a large company, and there are many different things that you need to be on top of in each of those roles. I think the key is figuring out which one you want to be good at, or which one you think you could be best at, and trying to funnel yourself into learning more about those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Back to you, Maya.
Thank you, Jeremiah. So before we move on to the second section of this series, we would like to take questions from our viewers. And we have 5 questions right now. So the first one goes to you, Ms. Lashley. Based on your knowledge, what is the most prominent cybercrime in Trinidad and Tobago?
I looked at the statistics from the TTPS. I looked for statistics, and the most recent statistics I found was for 2018, and it spoke to online harassment. Now that's a broad category, so I'm not quite sure as to, I guess, the platforms involved, or the type of, what do they consider to be online harassment? Is it somebody defaming your character? Not quite sure the specifics of it. But from the statistics that I found from the TTPS, that seems to be the one that's most reported, online harassment. I can speak from my perspective because I work at the central bank, and the role, obviously, of the central bank being the regulator. I mean, most people think, we print money. So we manage, and we have a very important role to play in the financial aspect of the country. So you would imagine that a lot of the attacks that we face would be financially motivated. People are constantly trying to get their way into the bank, and through different methods that both Richard and I would have spoken about. So we see that this is not just something that is theory. This is something that is actively happening, and they are trying to get access to the country's resources. And we look at things at a country level. So anything that happens to the bank, the country potentially could be affected. And I will just share with you guys one example that happened some years ago. The Central Bank of Bangladesh, they had a cyber attack, and that attacker tried to steal almost $1 billion from the Central Bank of Bangladesh. They were able to eventually get away with just about $100 million from a country. That is a huge impact. That had a lot of repercussions for that country. Yeah. So the reason why they were caught is because they misspelled some of the instructions. So that might be a lesson. Stay in school, learn to spell. But I mean, in reality, we want you guys to be on our side, right? That we are defending our organizations and our institutions. But it just demonstrates to you that these crimes are generally financially motivated, and that's what we are fighting against. Yeah.
Yes, Miss. Thank you for that. Mr. Richard, a lot of persons would like to know, how would you know if you are hacked? Is there anything, any hint that they would give you, or would you just think it's normal and go about your daily business? So how would you know if you got hacked?
It's a good question, Maya. And I would say, if I had to share a statistic, I think on average, most discoveries of hacks take maybe 100 or maybe 150 days on average before companies realize that they've been attacked or they've been hacked. So it's something that's really difficult to know. And I'll tell you why sometimes. Hacks are not always obvious. Sometimes they lie dormant. There's a type of attack that we call a zero-day exploit, what that means is, let's say that you've clicked on a phishing email and you've opened a link, and that's taken you to a website, and it said, click here to take some other action, and that installed an application unbeknownst to you on your computer. Nothing happens, but that program that you've installed has a piece of code in it that says, on this specific day at this specific time, I'm going to do something really bad. And so that can sit down in your computer for days or weeks or months before you even realize it's been there. Sometimes you only realize when that time has come and it's time to execute this program. So as we keep saying, what's important is, I remember I said it's not always a matter of if you get hacked, it's a matter of when. You always have to be vigilant. You always have to keep updating, taking, as Keisha was also saying, ensuring that you're doing the fundamentals, right? And doing those well. Those are the barriers that you're creating to prevent yourself from being a victim. But if you think, oh, well, maybe my computer is not as fast as it used to be, that sometimes can be an indicator that something's running in the background that's taking up some of your processing power and directing it elsewhere. So if you think, for example, that your devices are not perhaps behaving as fast as they used to, it's not always an indication of some malicious software in your device, but it can be. And once you do discover something like that happening, it's one of the probably more obvious indicators. You want to take some action. You want to run some scans. You want to look for some anti-malware programs. And be careful, there are lots of anti-malware programs that are also viruses that are pretending to be anti-malware. So be careful that you look for trusted names for those programs that you install to look for viruses, and not give yourself a virus in the process, right? But I guess to sum up, it's not very easy to know in all cases. There are very few indicators, as I said, probably the device behaving a little strange. You may see pop-ups happening on your device, on your computer. Those things are all pretty good indicators that something is not right, and that you should probably take some more actions, right? But if it's something like a zero-day exploit or a Trojan, or maybe a Bitcoin miner that's sitting in the background and just using your processor speed, or corrupting some of your resources, you're unlikely to know. So it's better to be preventative in your approach to cybersecurity. And if you are exposed, or you are attacked and your data is compromised, you always have your backups that you can rely on. So and Keisha's point there was well taken. Ensure that you have your backups. You don't want to be paying ransoms, or you don't want to discover that all your photos have disappeared. I couldn't deal with that, right? So just make sure that you are taking backups and not keeping eggs in one basket, right?
Yes, thank you a lot, Mr. Shepherd. You mentioned a bit about viruses, and that actually prompted me to ask this question for Ms. Lashley. So, Ms. Lashley, how can you identify an ad that has a virus, and what can you do to block that ad or prevent it from coming up on your laptop?
Thank you, Maya. I think the best approach, as Richard would have shared, is that you need to keep your browser updated. So just as you get updates for your operating system, your browsers also routinely get updated. You try to keep those updated as best as possible. There are different plugins that are available with the intent of blocking unnecessary software from running on your machine. If we look at Microsoft, for example, Microsoft is moving away from Internet Explorer and they're moving to a Chromium-based type of browser, which essentially, what does that mean for you? It allows you to execute sites and give you a level of comfort that the site that you're accessing is legit, is safe for you to access and to run. So I would suggest that the browser that you utilize, that you keep it updated, that's your best bet. And you have to rely on the other controls on your machine to prevent something malicious from executing on it.
Thank you, Ms. Lashley. I hope you don't think I'm picking on you because I'm going to ask you another question right now. How would you know if a website is safe and if it's safe to use?
Maya, I do think you are picking on me a little bit, but that's all right. So there are different options available to you. Certainly when you're browsing, there is usually a built-in check that that you see on a lot of the browsers available now that tells you this site is clean. But if you get a link, for example, that you're not too sure about, there are different sites that you can go to verify if that is a legitimate site or not. So one that you can take a note of is a website called VirusTotal. That website basically collates malicious domains, malicious IPs, malicious websites in one area that anybody can go and copy the particular website, and it will tell you if it's clean or if it's not. So what that is able to help you do is to say, okay, I'm seeing this website showing as malicious or showing as spam based on these 3 or 4 checks. And because of that, no, I'm not going to take the chance. So VirusTotal, you guys can make a note of that. If there's a site that you're not quite sure about, copy it and paste it in VirusTotal, and VirusTotal will assess it against a number of indicators to let you know if it's potentially malicious or not.
Excuse me, Ms. Lashley. Sorry, man, just taking chair away from you for a little bit. That check you was saying, and that is be like on the link with the lock on it, and that's the check you was talking about, Miss?
So no, so that is another check that is good though, Jeremiah. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. That link that you're talking about speaks to a website having a legitimate certificates. So what is available is that anybody who uses the internet, there are specific certificate authorities that will say, hey, you see this website that Jeremiah owns? I know Jeremiah is the owner, he's legitimate, and because of that, I will give you a certificate that's anybody that comes to your website, they can say, all right, this person says that Jeremiah is okay, and because of that, you have a legitimate certificate. So that refers to is a secure way of a user knowing this is a legit site or not. So I don't know if you're familiar with HTTP versus HTTPS, which lets you know that this site is a secure site. All right. So that is one control that you are speaking about. I was actually referring to if you are using a browser and you go to Google and you search for a particular site. Right within there are built-in indicators that let you know this site is safe. If you're still not sure, then I'm suggesting that you can consider checking on VirusTotal. Yeah?
Okay, Miss, thank you very much. I could have a back now.
Yes, Miss. So that third question did not come from me, so I was not picking on you then. But I'm going to pick on Mr. Shepherd now. So, Mr. Shepherd, can you give a person advice on how they can go about getting an antivirus or anti-spyware software on their laptop. So you know how some people would like to download stuff because they think that can help them prevent getting a virus or any phishing or anything along that line. So what advice would you give to a person who's looking for that?
There are a couple of great apps out there that are free that you can, or there are ones that you can purchase. But I know you're probably on a budget, being students, so I would recommend some of the free ones for you. I think there's an application called Malwarebytes. That's a pretty good one that does a good scan of your device and is able to identify not just viruses, but it would also check things that maybe might have been installed in your browser, for example. So malicious cookie. And I hate that I bring up things that you may not understand. So let me quickly explain a cookie. So cookies are basically bits of information that the website exchanges with you so that it can, probably give you a better user experience. So normally when you go back to that site, it remembers what you looked at, or it might remember your name, and it would say, hey, Maya, remember that you were last looking at X. Well, this is what other people have bought, and you may want to look at that. That's one of the ways they do it. But that mechanism of exchanging information between yourself and that browser or that website can also be used to track things that you do on your computer and can be used for malicious purposes. So not everyone that uses a cookie with their website does so with a good intent. And Anti-Malwarebytes, for example, Malwarebytes is a good application that may be able to identify one of those types of malicious cookies, for example. So antivirus, I think there are a lot on the market. The McAfees and the Nortons of the world are fine. The ones that come with your computer is also pretty good. So the Windows Essentials, it's not the best, but it will give you some level of comfort and some level of security. I think Avast is also a pretty good one. It really depends on whether you're using a PC or if you're using a Mac. But I'm assuming most people here are PC users, Windows. So those applications I highly recommend for anti-malware and antivirus.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Shepherd. And Ms. Lashley, I'm back to you again. I'm aware that you had a presentation to present, but I'm not sure if you covered everything within your discussion thus far. So is it that you would like to present now, or was everything covered?
Thanks, Maya. I think we would have covered the topics throughout the discussion, so I wouldn't need to present, and I'm fine with answering your questions or anybody else that may have questions.
Okay, Miss, thank you. I would now hand you over to Jeremiah. I'll give you a little break from me for now.
So for this section, we'll be asking a few questions about each of you so that our viewers can learn a little more about you. I will start with Ms. Lashley. How did you get to where you are today, from when you were a teenager to now? I'm sorry for picking on you so often. Just, ladies first.
Jeremiah, you have taken over from Maya, but that's okay. So my secondary life, I was a student at St. Francois Girls College. So I did up to E-levels at St. Francois. And my background really was in languages and history, nothing to do with technology. I only got into technology when I went to university. And that is just before going to university, I realized this was an area that I found to be interesting and I wanted to learn more about it. So I went to university. I went up to the graduate level. And then I got into core IT in the financial services sector. What I would say, Jeremiah, is that you never ever stop learning. And all my degree really did was say to my company, listen, this person, Keisha, has the ability to learn. Because once I got into the company, that is where I really, really got the experience and the knowledge that I have today. I started off in applications development. It really wasn't my love. I really discovered my love when I moved to the infrastructure side of IT, which was really like building servers, doing firewall administration. That's where I really got my love for IT. And what I liked about it is that you get almost immediate gratification. When you're building an application, you have to go back and forth with users, you have to test. It takes a lot longer before you see the reward for your efforts, right? So with infrastructure, it was exciting, always something new, always evolving, always growing. So that's where I got into core IT, and I subsequently moved to cybersecurity. And the path that I took in terms of that was I started to do certifications. So I started with very, very basic fundamental courses. I'll share a couple with you. I would have done a cybersecurity fundamentals course with a body called ISACA. Then I did something with Security Plus, and each time I got a bit more exposure and a bit more information. So that is how I am where I am today. Just constantly evolving, constantly trying to learn more, immersing myself in the field, and just being as exposed as possible. This is a very, very dynamic field. If you like constantly growing, constantly evolving, constantly learning, you're gonna love this field. And it's a field that we don't have enough people, so it's not oversubscribed. And definitely the skills that you learn and you attain here, you can apply it globally. So the world is available to you. So I would encourage you and anybody who's looking on today, get into this field. It's a great space to be in.
Thank you, Ms. Lashley. Mr. Shepard, would you like to tell us how you got to where you are today, please?
Sure, Jeremiah. So I think I'll start secondary school. I was a Trinity College student that's the Mocha College. There wasn't an East when I went to Trinity College as yet. But after I completed CXE, I opted not to do A levels. Instead, I went to John Donaldson. I think it's now UTT. And what I studied there was electronic and electrical engineering technician program. And it was there that I was also exposed to my first bit of programming. There was an a GW basic course. Now, this probably sends anybody over the age of 50 back into their memories, because no one ever uses any of these languages anymore. But it was what we call a foundational language, like COBOL or Fortran. It basically taught you how to think the way computers think. So it makes you logical. When you start off learning about programming, you have to figure out, how do I get this device to do what I want it to do in the way that it needs to be done? And to do that, you have to learn, now languages a bit more, they're able to understand common language a bit better. But back then, you had to be more specific and use what we called syntax. So it had to be very specific. But it was there when I was at John Dee, I got my first kind of, my feet wet in programming and develop. And that kind of started my love for technology and for computing systems. After I'd completed there, I had signed on for an internship. It was about 2 weeks, actually, a job at Citibank. That was one of my first jobs. And to me, that was a very great experience for me. It was an international organization, an international bank, and it was a really mature organization. When you work for an international organization, you get exposed to a lot of things that they've evolved with over time. So whereas a new company may start off making up some things as they go along, or sometimes they go into getting experts to helping them, working with really well-established or international companies, tend to have gone through that process for quite a number of years. And so when you're exposed to those companies, you get that great advantage of starting off learning those processes already at a very mature level. But working there, although my first contract was approximately 2 weeks, I ended up staying there for almost 6 years, and went through the ranks as well, from being a technician to being an assistant manager at some point. But what I really wanted to talk about is that being one of my first jobs in a bank and working in technology. You realize that technology is a part of everything that the bank does. And what it did was it helped me to be exposed to banking in a way that I'd never understood before. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about not boxing yourself in, not thinking that you have it all figured out. I thought I was going there to be a technologist, to learn technology, to fix computers or to, resolve people's problems. But I ended up having a very deep appreciation for how banks operate and how banks work, because we are the ones in the IT. We have to know not just how the systems work, but how the users use those systems. And understanding those different areas in the bank and being exposed to that started giving me a great appreciation for maybe how things could improve as well. So it became almost a turning point for me in shifting a bit away from only being primarily technical to also understanding how the business operated, and then using my knowledge of how the business operated to making recommendations for how technology could improve that. And when I took on different roles in different organizations, that became a really big part of what I did. So I never really sat fully as a technology person, but I always sat straddling both worlds, understanding what needed to be done from a business perspective and how the technology could get that done. Understanding what pain points were in the business, what problems we were having, and figuring out how technology could solve those problems. And being able to speak what I would say both languages, meaning being able to speak the way that the business speaks and being able to speak the way that technologist speaks, helps you to bridge or to saddle both of those worlds and really create a great outcome. So for me, that's never something I anticipated, but for me, being exposed to those companies and to the processes and just, putting myself out there and learning as much as I could, created almost a niche for me that created quite a bit of success for me throughout some of my career. So that's really, if I had to bring out one point about, my career and where I've gotten to at this point, it was, I never believed that where I was where I was going to end up. And I never had a set path for where I would go. I always followed the challenge of either it was a new role or a new technology, but I was always led by that challenge, and I was always led by understanding what that business challenge was, and I had a passion for using technology to solve those problems. And if anyone else has similar, I would give them the same advice. Wherever you are, whether it's in school or whether whenever you start working or whenever you're talking with peers or friends or uncles or aunts that you have that are working, question them about what they do. Try to understand as much as you can about these different roles and jobs that people occupy, and see if it sparks something that's interesting to you, and figure out if there's a niche for you in those places, and if you can find your own way in that world. But then, even when you do find it, don't believe that's the end. Keep learning, keep exposing yourself as much as you can. It's a big world out there, but the internet is also just as big, and has lots of answers, wrong answers a lot of times too. So go to the right websites, but keep learning as much as you can.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Back to Ms. Lashley now. What was one of your biggest challenges along the way to where you are right now, and how did you overcome it?
Sure, Maya. I would say one of the more difficult moments in terms of my career was I was leading a particular project, and we had done all the research, we had prepared, we had organized our users to come in and test after we were finished. So we were basically moving from one version to another version. But this solution, there were persons within the bank that were affected and persons outside of the bank. And despite our best planning and all the efforts we put into it, we failed on that particular weekend. Now, failing is, I mean, it's part of life, yes. But I was so disappointed by it because I know that we had put in the efforts. We had really tried to figure out all the different things that could go wrong. But one thing about IT, which if you really get into the field, you will see that sometimes you will do something perfectly in a test environment. And when you do that same thing in a production environment, oh gosh, things don't always go as planned. So that particular weekend, we were unsuccessful. As a team lead, I had to take ownership of that particular failure. I had to put things in place, explain to my leadership of what went wrong, what are we going to do differently. And, we put in the requisite efforts and we were able to successfully complete that migration another time that we did it. But some of the takeaways for me is that, listen, you have to be able to, you can't let the pressure get to you. You have to always have that mindset, look, I can't be the first person experiencing this problem. Let me see what resources are available to me. Let me keep trying. And listen, this is being in IT. You're always going to have things that don't go according to plan, but you have to be able to respond. And that's what I tell my team. Listen, we can't be the first person. We can't be the first company doing this. What resources are available to us? Let us put in the effort. If you put in the effort and you don't make it, that's all right. At least you would have tried, and we're going to come again. We're going to try again. We must finish. We must get through. That is our approach. We never quit. We never stop. Yes, you're going to have knocks along the way, and I've had my fair share, but that's the mindset that you have to have, and that's the mindset that I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Lashley. I would like to redirect the same question to Mr. Shepard, if you don't mind.
That was what biggest challenge was it?
Yes, what was one of your biggest challenges and how did you overcome it?
So you remember when I said I went after the challenge in companies and trying to find new ways of solving problems in businesses. So that sounds lovely, I guess. It sounds like you're solving problems and making people's lives happy. But in reality, it represents a change, right? And invariably, change is something that we don't always deal very well with. As a person or as an organization, those are things that we have to come to terms with, how we move forward. And so one of my challenges is, and I've faced it quite a bit actually, in many different roles, is whenever you're putting something new out there and you're trying to change something or improve something or to make it better, it sometimes comes at the cost of changing the way that things are done right now. And you have people that may not believe that you can do it, or there are people that don't want to do it differently. And so those types of changes always need, there are two things I would say are the way that I approach it. I continue to approach it because it continues to be the biggest obstacle I have generally, And the first one I'd say is, don't expect to always earn the benefit of the doubt. Being consistent in what you do and how you do it tells people about you. They don't always have to believe what you say, but they'll believe what you do. And if you're consistent in how you deliver and what you do, then you'd find that you get a bit more trust in what you need to get done at a company. And the second thing I'd say is, when it comes to technology, it can be easy to focus on the technical and getting all the getting the nuts and the bolts right. But where there's a human interface, you have to remember that if humans don't use it, the technology is useless. So you have to spend the time ensuring you understand the way that people think and how they're going to use technology to make it consumable to them. It's something that they will adopt easy, because adoption and putting new things out there is always going to be challenging, and change is always going to be difficult. But as long as you can, create that adoption through understanding what people are facing, what their challenges are, and how they best work with technology, you can help them to overcome that change averseness or that challenge. And in yourself, you end up learning a lot more as well about people, and you have the advantage of making great relationships and great friendships out of that process, as well as the fact that you also learn a bit more about the way that business operates and works. So that's a bit about my challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Mr. Shepherd. So, all right, to the opposite of that question, what was one of your best experiences in your current field, Mr. Shepherd again? Like, give Miss Lashley a little break.
No problem. Yeah, she deserves one. She's been hitting all the right answers this afternoon. I think the best experience for me, I was involved with a greenfield project, and for those who don't know, it was an oil and gas company, and the project was developing a natural gas and offshore development and an onshore processing plant for that gas. It was quite a ambitious project, and it had to be completed in less than 3 years, from basically nothing. And going through that process, being involved with the team that was involved in that process, being involved in a greenfield project for one. For a technologist, I'll tell you, those are the things that we dream for. Usually, we're always fixing something that's broken, or correcting or reinstalling or improving on something. But when you get an opportunity to do something where nothing exists before, and you have a blank slate to create your own, to paint your own painting, that's an opportunity that doesn't come around very often. And so I was really glad to be a part of that project, and it was an excellent experience for me. Stands out as one of the best experiences I've had.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Ms. Lashley, the same question. What was one of your best experiences working in this field?
Sure. So what I would say is that getting people to change their behavior takes some work, right? Getting an organization culture to change is equally as difficult. And I think one of the challenges that I had when I got into this space was the organization felt that, listen, securing the bank, that's your job. That's not my job. What does that have to do with me if I'm an accountant? What does that have? How do I play a role in securing the bank? And over the course of some years, what we have been able to do in terms of letting and making users aware of just how much of a role they play in safeguarding the organization, it has been rewarding. So we have been doing a number of initiatives, a number of user awareness initiatives. We have done a lot of training programs. And slowly but surely, I am seeing the change in the way that people respond to cybersecurity and the responsibility that persons face. So now what I'm finding is that people reach out to us. They're saying, hey, we got this email. We don't know if to open it. We don't know if to click on it. And that is what we want. We want, if you're not sure, ask us. Rather than you say, well, I wasn't sure, but I still take the chance. So the fact that there has been a mindset shift in the organization, it's really, really rewarding. Does that mean that somebody will never click on a phishing email? Highly unlikely, but at least they have the understanding, and it's a constant working process working to change that mindset, and seeing the results of that effort has been rewarding for me.
Thank you, Ms. Lashley. Well, we have one more question, but Mr. Shepherd answered answered two questions in one for the first question. So I'll ask Ms. Lashley this one. Um, what advice would you think will be useful for everyone viewing?
All right, so just in terms of general cybersecurity practices and just good hygiene in terms of the way that you operate, I would say do the basics well. If you do the basics well, you should have some level of success in safeguarding your data. All right, Keisha, well, what does that mean? Keep your systems updated. Whether you have a mobile device, your tablet, your laptop, keep your operating system updated. Keep your browsers updated. Richard would have shared a list of antivirus products that are available. Have antivirus on your machine. Ensure you have, your two-factor authentication is set up. So anytime I go to a website and I see two-factor is available, I sign up for it because I want to make it as difficult as possible for somebody to take advantage and to utilize my identity to do something that I don't want them to do. All right, so utilize two-factor authentication as much as possible. Use long passwords, complex passwords. For you guys, you're young people, you're on the different social media platforms and you want to share content, you want to share pictures, that's all right. But just be careful about your friends list, review the privacy settings. So Facebook, your email, they always say, do you want to do a health check? Do the health checks. Make sure that you're sharing information only with the persons that you want to share information with. And just be mindful of the fact that even though, somebody may reach out to you, somebody might send you a message in your DM you, right? You don't really know who's behind that message. Be very, very wary of people, even somebody who it may appear to be one of your friends. Just as you would have learned today, it's very easy for somebody's identity to be compromised. Somebody could copy all your pictures, Jeremiah, from your different social media platforms and create a second account. All right, so be very, very mindful. Something doesn't seem right, question it. All right, and just in terms of a general statement for you guys, this field is a broad field. There are a lot of opportunities. We encourage you guys to get involved. There are a number of free resources that are available. If it's something that you are interested in, there's a website, a body called EDX, E as in Edward, D as in David, X as in X-ray, EDX. There's another called Cybrary, right? The Organization of American States, they offer a number of academic scholarships for young people who want to get into this field. There are hackathons and activities that encourage young people to get in, to find vulnerabilities and search for bugs in programs. There are a number of things available to you guys. I am prepared to continue working with the Heroes Foundation and sharing my expertise. So anybody who's interested in, getting more information from me, I'm willing, and I'm sure Richard feels the same way. So there are a lot of opportunities for you guys. Come and join us. Let us fight to keep our data secure. Don't go and join those bad guys at all. We want bright young minds on our side. All right, so that's what I have for you for today.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lashley. Maya, do you have any questions or any comments before you hand it over to Ms. Albies?
No, I do not have any any questions or comments, but I do have a great big thank you for both of you guys, because after listening and interacting with you guys on this meeting, I learned a lot. And I'm actually an IT student, and my concept of IT was quite limited, but after hearing you guys share your experiences and things you learn, I can now say that IT is just not about the computer and learning the parts and learning about software. It's a lot more than that, and I'm interested to learn a lot more about that in the future. I would also like to thank you so much for sharing these tips with us. I learned a lot, and I'm sure Jeremiah learned the same amount as me, because there were a lot of good points shared. What stood out to me was the ways and methods in which we can ensure our safety online, because there's a lot of things that I did not know we can do. So like the verification method, I actually did not do that before on my Instagram, so I'm going to do that as soon as I leave here. And I would like to thank Ms. Lashley for sharing her experience and giving a lot of motivational quotes within her explanation, because it also helped me understand that you should not give up even though you think you have reached somewhere, and your experience with your team when you guys work and was a failure is a part of success. In order to grow, you need to at first, have some sort of experience as what it feels to be underneath, so you will know what it is to be on top. And also, Mr. Richard, thank you so much for all your ways in which we can stay safe on the internet. I wrote down a lot, and I'm going to share that with my IT class. So thank you so much for both of you, and I will now hand you over to Ms. Pat.
Well, we had a wonderful time with so much information shared. I want to say thank you so much. And in closing, I want to thank Ms. Ashley, and I want to thank Mr. Richard Shepard for sharing such interesting and vital information with us. I want to thank our fabulous hosts, Maya and Jeremiah, for leading our discussion so effortlessly. It was a wonderful evening. There were so many tips shared. I want to say thank you. I really do appreciate all of you for contributing to this wonderful, successful session, and we look forward to future partnerships with you all.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Maya and Jeremiah, and also Keisha. Pleasure sharing the stage with you this afternoon.
Definitely.
Very, very excited to have been a part of this, and hope we have some more of these going forward.
Oh, definitely. We learned a lot. And yes. We had some, yes, we did. I mean, you're sending me to go and do some security on my devices. Great advice. And I really do hope that the students who are listening, you want to get into that field, please let us know. We have two wonderful experts willing to work with you to help you to go on that journey. It seemed like quite an exciting journey to go on. You have so much opportunities. Please take advantage of it. Thank you. Keisha, all the things that you told us, oh my, and the journey you both have been on, it has been fantastic. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Pat, Maya, Jeremiah, and Richard. It really was a pleasure, and the time went by very quickly.
Yes, it did.
This afternoon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
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 Big congrats, Todd.
Thanks.
Tim, Carol's husband's cubicle mate.
Right, yeah, of course.
Huge promotion, huh?
Yeah, I'm really excited. How did you know I got promoted?
LinkedIn.
We're connected?
Oh, yeah. And how sweet was Sasha to take you to La Scala to celebrate? Oh, her Instagram pics of the gnocchi with all the shaved truffles. It just looked so good.
Yeah, you follow my wife?
Well, yeah, you tag her and everything, so it'd be rude if I didn't. How does she like her new Zumba place? You guys getting your bods in shape for Mexico? I saw your Facebook post. I was like, my goodness, you got to take me with you.
I got to take this, okay?
Is that Hunter? Ask him how he liked the T-Swift concert the other night. His snaps from the show, they were just incredible. #jelly.
You know my kid?
Yeah, I like to think I know him pretty well, actually. He makes the best posts on Snapchat.
He's on Snapchat?
Oh, and he was a little upset that he didn't get a t-shirt the other night, so... Medium, I'll let you be the hero. Good to see you, buddy. Steven!